Michelle Obama had always been known for her grace, kindness, and simple way of living. Even though she was the First Lady of the United States at one time, she never allowed fame or power to change her character. One afternoon, while visiting a city quietly for a personal trip, she decided to stop by a luxury boutique. She wanted to pick up a small gift for a friend, something thoughtful and unique. She dressed in a simple outfit, comfortable shoes, plain jeans, and a light sweater. She carried no designer handbag, no heavy jewelry, and most importantly, she did not walk in with a big team or security. She simply wanted to feel normal, like any other person shopping on an ordinary day. The boutique was known for its exclusivity. Its windows were polished until they shined, and the displays featured expensive handbags and elegant clothes. Inside, the air smelled of fine perfume and soft music played in the background. Wealthy tourists and high-end customers often walked in, spending large amounts of money without blinking. The staff had been trained to keep a sharp eye, judging quickly who was worth their time and who was not. As Michelle entered, she looked around with genuine interest. She loved supporting businesses, but what mattered to her was the story behind each item, the work of the artists, the history of the fabrics, and the meaning of the design. She paused at a shelf displaying scarves, touching the smooth silk carefully. She thought one of them might make a perfect gift. But as she looked, the boutique manager noticed her from behind the counter. The manager was a woman who prided herself on keeping the store exclusive. She glanced at Michelle and frowned. To her, this woman in plain clothes did not look like the type who could afford even a keychain from the shop. Without asking a single question, without offering a smile, the manager walked briskly over. "Excuse me," she said, her voice cold. "Can I help you with something?" Michelle smiled politely and replied, "I'm just looking for a gift." "Your scarves are beautiful." The manager crossed her arms, eyeing Michelle's outfit from head to toe. "These scarves are very expensive. They are not for browsing. If you're not planning to buy, I'll have to ask you not to touch them." Michelle remained calm even though her heart sank a little at the rudeness. She had spent her life teaching respect and kindness, so the sharpness in the woman's tone did not go unnoticed. Still, she nodded. "I understand. I am planning to buy something. Could you tell me more about these designs?" But instead of answering, the manager sighed loudly. "Look, I don't think this is the right store for you. We don't allow people to waste time here. Please leave." Other customers nearby paused and stared. Some recognized Michelle immediately. Their eyes widened in disbelief. How could the manager not know who she was speaking to? A few whispered to each other, stunned at the way the situation was unfolding. But Michelle, with her natural poise, did not argue. She simply placed the scarf back gently, nodded once again, and said, "Thank you for your time." With that, she turned and walked toward the door. Her steps were steady, her face calm, though inside she felt the sting of being judged unfairly. She had been treated as if her worth depended on her clothing or the size of her wallet, but she chose not to react with anger. She knew dignity meant rising above such moments. The boutique fell into an awkward silence after she left. Some customers felt ashamed for not speaking up. Others shook their heads, whispering about the manager's behavior. The staff at the counter, who had also realized who the woman was, shifted uncomfortably, but no one dared to say anything in that moment. The manager, proud of herself, returned to the counter with a smug smile, believing she had done her job by protecting the store's image. Outside, Michelle walked down the street quietly. She breathed in deeply, allowing the fresh air to calm her spirit. She reminded herself that disrespect from one person did not erase her values. She thought of the countless times she had spoken to young people about self-worth, about not letting others define them. Now she was living her own advice, but the story was far from over. As she walked away, a tourist standing nearby had snapped a photo of the moment she was leaving the store. The tourist, who instantly recognized her, shook his head in disbelief. He muttered, "They just kicked Michelle Obama out." Soon he posted the picture on social media, along with a short caption about what he had witnessed. Within minutes, the post began to spread. People online were shocked. Comments poured in, asking how anyone could treat Michelle Obama like that. Many pointed out that no person, famous or not, deserved such humiliation. Others felt proud of Michelle's graceful reaction, saying she showed more class in her silence than the manager did in her words. Back at the boutique, the manager had no idea what was happening online. She continued to walk around the store, speaking to wealthy customers and ignoring the uneasy stares of her own staff. She thought she had handled the situation perfectly, not realizing that her decision would soon bring consequences she never imagined. Meanwhile, Michelle continued with her day as planned. She met with friends, shared meals, and smiled as though nothing had happened. But those who had been in the store could not forget the sight of her leaving so calmly after being treated unfairly. They carried the story with them, and soon it would reach the ears of millions. The boutique's polished glass windows still shined under the afternoon sun, but inside the seeds of regret had already begun to grow. The first chapter of this incident was closed, but what would follow would leave the boutique, its staff, and the entire world stunned. The moment Michelle Obama left the boutique, the atmosphere inside the store was uneasy. Customers who had witnessed the scene kept whispering among themselves. Some of them shook their heads, others murmured in shock. A few of them had recognized her instantly, while others only realized after hearing the whispers. But one thing was clear. Everyone knew that something deeply unfair had just happened. The manager, however, returned to her counter with confidence, as if she had done her duty. She believed she had protected the store's luxury image by removing someone who, in her eyes, did not belong. What the manager did not know was that outside the store, the story had already begun to travel faster than she could ever imagine. A tourist who had seen everything had taken a quick picture of Michelle as she walked out. The photo showed Michelle in her plain clothes, leaving the boutique with dignity, while behind her the shiny glass doors reflected the logo of the famous store. The tourist added a short caption, "This boutique just kicked out Michelle Obama." Within minutes, the post started to spread online. At first, it was shared among a small group of friends. Then, as people reacted, commented, and reshared, the story picked up speed. Soon, thousands of people were talking about it. Some wrote that they could not believe a woman like Michelle, who had spent years serving as the First Lady, could be treated this way. Others said the bigger lesson was about respect. No one, famous or not, deserved to be judged unfairly. Back inside the boutique, the staff began to feel nervous. One of the younger employees had seen the picture online during her break. Her hands trembled as she showed it to her co-worker. "This is everywhere already," she whispered. "People know it was her." The co-worker's face turned pale. Both of them glanced at the manager, who was busy speaking with a wealthy-looking couple about a handbag. The manager had no idea of the storm that was building. Outside, in cafes and homes nearby, conversations began to spark. People who had seen Michelle on the street after she left the boutique were telling others what they had witnessed. They described how calm she had been, how polite even when she was humiliated. They compared her grace with the manager's coldness, and the difference was striking. By evening, major online platforms carried the story. Headlines popped up: "Luxury Boutique, Accused of Humiliating Michelle Obama," and "Former First Lady Disrespected by Store Manager." Even those who were not interested in fashion or politics clicked on the story, curious about how such a moment could happen. At the same time, people began to share personal experiences of being judged in stores, restaurants, and public places. They wrote about being treated unfairly based on their clothes, accents, or appearances. Michelle's incident became a mirror for many, showing how common such treatment could be, even for someone so respected. Back at the boutique, the owner, who was traveling abroad, received a flood of messages. Friends and colleagues sent him links to the news articles, asking if it was true. Shocked, he called the store immediately. The phone rang at the counter and the manager picked up. She answered with her usual confidence, only to hear her boss's angry voice. "Do you know what you've done?" he demanded. "Do you realize who you told to leave?" The manager froze, her smile fading. I was only protecting the store," she stammered. "Protecting the store," the owner replied sharply. "You humiliated Michelle Obama. This story is all over the world. Do you understand what this means for us?" The manager's face turned pale as she glanced at her staff, who now looked at her with both fear and disappointment. She tried to explain, but her words felt weak. "She didn't look like she belonged here," she whispered. "That is exactly the problem," her boss said firmly. "You judged a person by appearance, and now our reputation is destroyed." As the night fell, the boutique's social media accounts were flooded with comments. Thousands of people wrote messages, criticizing the store for its arrogance and for treating Michelle so poorly. Many people said they would never shop there again. Others demanded that the manager be fired immediately. While all of this chaos built around the boutique, Michelle remained calm. She had not posted anything online, nor had she spoken to reporters. She continued her personal trip quietly, spending time with friends and family. Those who knew her well said she was not surprised by how the world reacted. Michelle had always believed that people's true colors showed in moments of pressure, and now the world had seen the truth about that manager. The whispers grew louder each day. Customers stopped visiting the boutique. Some even stood outside, taking photos of the storefront and sharing them online with critical captions. What had once been a place of pride was quickly becoming a symbol of arrogance and unfairness. The staff inside worked nervously, answering calls from angry customers and dealing with the stress of endless criticism. The manager tried to hold her head high, but her confidence was cracking. Each morning when she walked into the store, she could feel the stares of people outside who knew what she had done. And yet she had no idea what was about to happen next. Because while the world was talking about her mistake, Michelle Obama was preparing a response. Not a loud one filled with anger, not a speech filled with complaints, but something much more powerful. Something that would leave everyone speechless. The whispers on the street had only been the beginning. Soon the entire city, and then the world, would witness a moment of grace that would turn the story completely around. The story of Michelle Obama's treatment at the luxury boutique had already spread far beyond the walls of the store. What began as a whispered conversation among a few shocked customers had now become a headline across newspapers, television shows, and social media platforms. By the third day, it seemed like everyone was talking about it. The photograph of Michelle leaving the store with calm dignity had been shared millions of times. People admired the way she had not argued or raised her voice. Her quiet reaction became the central part of the story. Commentators wrote that true power did not need to shout. It simply showed itself through grace. But while the public admired Michelle, the boutique was suffering. Sales dropped sharply. Loyal customers canceled their orders. Several celebrities who once supported the store announced that they would no longer shop there. The owner, frustrated and desperate, issued a formal apology. He posted it on the boutique's website and social media pages, promising to investigate what had happened. The apology, however, did not calm the public. Many felt it was too late. They wanted to see accountability, not just words. The focus turned to the manager. People demanded to know if she was still working at the store. Videos of other customers sharing their bad experiences at the same boutique also surfaced. Some described being ignored. Others described being looked down upon. The boutique had built its image on luxury, but now people saw it as a place filled with arrogance. Meanwhile, Michelle continued to remain silent. She did not call for punishment. She did not give interviews about the incident, and she did not post a single word on her social media accounts. This silence made people even more curious. What was she thinking? Would she respond? Would she simply let the story fade? Behind the scenes, Michelle had been reflecting deeply. She believed moments like these were opportunities to teach, not to shame. She knew the world was watching, and she wanted her response to send a message that would last far longer than the gossip of a viral story. In her heart, Michelle thought about the values she had always carried: kindness, dignity, and respect for all. She remembered how many times in her life she had been underestimated, whether as a young student, a lawyer, or even as First Lady. Each time, she had used those experiences to inspire others. This moment, though painful, was another chance to do the same. Meanwhile, inside the boutique, the tension grew worse. The manager could no longer hide from the truth. Every time she walked through the store, she felt the stares of her own employees. She avoided looking at the comments online, but she knew the world was against her. Her once confident voice now shook when she spoke to customers. Some customers even walked in just to confront her, asking, "How could you treat Michelle Obama like that?" One afternoon, the staff gathered quietly in the back room. They spoke in hushed voices about what might happen next. Some believed the boutique would close. Others feared they would lose their jobs. But one young employee said something that stayed in everyone's mind. "She's going to come back." Michelle Obama doesn't leave things like this unfinished, and she was right. Michelle made her decision. She would return to the boutique, but not in anger. She wanted to show the world that respect and humility could change even the hardest of hearts. Her team contacted the boutique's headquarters to let them know she would visit again. this time openly. The boutique's owner, nearly in tears, agreed and prepared for her arrival. He promised that the visit would be respectful and that every effort would be made to make things right. When the news leaked that Michelle might return, people became excited. Reporters began gathering near the boutique, waiting for confirmation. Shoppers stopped outside, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. The city buzzed with anticipation. Social media filled with speculation about what she would say or do. Would she forgive them? Would she call out the manager? No one knew, but everyone wanted to witness it. The manager, however, felt trapped in fear. She could not imagine facing Michelle again. She remembered the cold words she had spoken, the judgmental tone she had used, and the pride she had felt as she ordered her to leave. Now those memories returned like heavy stones in her chest. She barely slept the night before Michelle's visit, worrying about what might happen to her career and reputation. On the morning of Michelle's expected return, the boutique looked different. The displays were carefully arranged, the floors polished until they shined. The staff wore their best smiles, though their hands trembled slightly. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Reporters held cameras ready. Curious citizens stood behind them, eager to be part of the moment. And then she arrived. Michelle Obama stepped out of a car, dressed elegantly but simply as always. This time she was not alone. Members of her team walked with her, and photographers captured every step. The crowd applauded softly as she approached the boutique doors. Inside, the manager stood frozen, her heart racing. She could feel sweat on her palms. She had no idea how Michelle would treat her. Would she be harsh? Would she ignore her completely? The seconds stretched like hours as Michelle entered the boutique once again. Her presence filled the room. She smiled warmly at the staff and greeted them kindly. Customers inside whispered in awe, surprised by her calmness. Even the reporters outside fell silent, watching closely. Michelle walked past the shelves slowly, just as she had the first time. She paused at the scarves again, touching one gently. The room was so quiet that even the soft music seemed distant. Then she turned, her eyes meeting those of the manager who had humiliated her days earlier. The manager felt her knees weaken. She tried to speak, but no words came out. Finally, she whispered, I'm sorry." Michelle nodded, her expression kind but firm. "We all make mistakes," she said softly. "But the way we treat people, whether they are rich or poor, known or unknown, defines who we truly are." Her words carried through the boutique like a wave. Customers, employees, and even the owner who had flown in to attend the visit all listened with tears in their eyes. Michelle was not here to embarrass anyone. She was here to remind everyone of a lesson that would never be forgotten. As she continued walking through the store, she greeted each employee with respect. She asked them about their work and complimented their efforts. The tension in the air began to melt away, replaced with admiration. Outside, reporters captured every moment. The world watched as Michelle Obama showed once again that her strength came not from anger, but from her ability to inspire. And in that moment, it became clear. This story was no longer about a mistake made by a boutique manager. It was about the power of grace to transform humiliation into a lasting lesson. Michelle Obama's return to the boutique had become the talk of the entire city. News channels broadcasted live updates, while social media platforms flooded with videos and pictures of her calm walk back into the store. People everywhere were waiting to see what would happen next. For most, this was not just about a shopping trip anymore. It had become a symbol, a test of dignity, respect, and how one chooses to respond after being mistreated. Inside the boutique, the tension was so thick that everyone felt it. Employees stood in perfect lines, trying to look professional, though their hands trembled. Customers who happened to be inside the store that day looked both nervous and excited. They knew they were witnessing something that would be remembered for years. The owner of the boutique had flown in overnight. He was already inside, waiting to greet Michelle with apologies and nervous bows. The manager, however, was a different story. She stood stiffly behind the counter, her face pale, her thoughts racing. She replayed the incident in her mind again and again. The cold way she had spoken to Michelle, the pride she felt when she told her to leave. Now, with the whole world watching, those same words felt like heavy chains around her. Michelle entered with a quiet smile. She did not storm in with anger, nor did she look down at anyone. She simply walked with her usual calm confidence. Her outfit was neat and simple, but her presence filled the entire room. She turned to the employees and greeted them warmly, as if she were meeting friends. The air shifted. People who had been tense began to breathe easier, though their eyes remained glued to her every move. She walked past the displays with genuine interest. She looked at the same scarves she had admired during her first visit, touching the soft fabric gently. This simple act reminded everyone of what had happened, the unfair judgment that led to her being pushed out the door. Now here she was, standing at the same spot, but the situation had completely changed. Finally, her eyes met the manager's. The room grew silent. The manager's lips trembled as she whispered, I am sorry." Michelle nodded slowly, her expression gentle yet firm. Her voice carried across the boutique, steady and full of meaning. "We all make mistakes, but how we treat people, no matter who they are or what they look like, defines who we really are." The words struck deep. Employees bowed their heads, customers nodded, and even the owner wiped his eyes. Michelle did not raise her voice, but her message filled the store more powerfully than any speech could. It was not just about her, but about every person who had ever been treated unfairly because of assumptions. She turned to the staff, asking them kindly about their work. She complimented their efforts and encouraged them to treat each customer with equal respect. The nervousness in the room began to change into admiration. People started to smile again, inspired by her calmness and wisdom. Outside, reporters captured every detail. The world watched as Michelle turned humiliation into a lesson of grace. She had every reason to be angry, but instead, she chose to remind people of the importance of kindness. That decision made her return even more powerful. By the time she left the boutique, the crowd outside erupted into applause. Cameras flashed, but Michelle only waved politely and moved on with her day, just as she always did, without pride, without revenge, simply with dignity. Inside, the manager stood in tears, realizing the depth of her mistake. The owner promised immediate changes to ensure such behavior would never happen again. Employees whispered that they would never forget this day, because they had just witnessed something extraordinary. Michelle's return was more than a visit to a boutique. It became a story of respect, humility, and the kind of strength that does not come from power but from character. The moment Michelle Obama stepped out of the boutique after her return, the crowd outside broke into warm applause. Some people clapped, others raised their phones to capture the scene, and many just stood in awe, realizing they had witnessed something unforgettable. Reporters quickly rushed to send their stories to their networks, and by evening, the entire world had seen the footage. What struck people most was not the mistake of the boutique nor the apology of the manager. It was Michelle's grace. She had every reason to be upset, every reason to call for punishment, but she chose to send a message of kindness instead. That choice touched millions. On television shows, commentators praised her words. On social media, her short reminder, "How we treat people defines who we are," was quoted everywhere. It became more than a sentence. It became a lesson people carried with them. For the boutique, however, the aftermath was heavy. The owner held a meeting the very next day with the staff. His voice was serious, and his expression showed how deeply the incident had shaken him. "This store will never be the same again," he admitted. "From this day forward, we will change how we treat people. No assumptions, no judgments. Every customer will be welcomed with respect." He looked at the manager, who sat quietly with her head lowered. The weight of her actions was too great to ignore. After days of public pressure, the decision was made. She would no longer serve as the face of the boutique. The announcement was made public, and while many felt it was a fair step, Michelle herself never asked for it. She had not demanded revenge. The consequences came naturally from the truth that the world had seen. As the boutique tried to rebuild its image, people from all walks of life continued to talk about what had happened. Teachers discussed it in classrooms as an example of respect. Leaders spoke about it at conferences, showing how humility could carry more power than authority. Families shared the story at dinner tables, reminding children not to judge people by how they look. Meanwhile, Michelle continued her life quietly. She never sought to shine the spotlight on the incident. In her speeches, when asked, she only said, "We all deserve respect. Not because of our title, not because of our money, but because we are human." Those words, simple yet powerful, stayed with people long after the headlines faded. In the weeks that followed, the boutique noticed something interesting. At first, they lost many customers, but then new ones began to arrive. Not because they wanted luxury goods, but because they wanted to see the place where Michelle had turned humiliation into a lesson. Some customers told the staff, "We are here not for the products, but for the reminder that respect must live in every corner of our lives." The store became a symbol of change, not because of its fashion, but because of the story attached to it. The manager, after leaving the boutique, faced a long road of reflection. For the first time in her career, she had been forced to face the mirror, not the physical one in the boutique, but the mirror of her actions. She realized how her pride and quick judgment had cost her reputation and her job, but she also realized something deeper. She had been given a second chance at life because Michelle had chosen to forgive through her actions. Instead of being crushed by the scandal, the manager decided to rebuild herself. She attended community programs, spoke about her mistake openly, and taught others what she had learned, that every person deserves dignity, no matter what they look like. Years later, when people told the story, they no longer focused only on the humiliation. They remembered the lesson. They remembered the way Michelle touched the scarves gently, even after being rejected, and how she spoke to the employees with kindness. They remembered her calm words that carried more power than anger ever could. The boutique incident became part of a much larger conversation across the world. Companies began retraining their staff, teaching them to avoid judgments based on appearance. Campaigns were launched under the theme of respect and equality. Michelle's example was used as inspiration in training sessions, books and documentaries, and through it all, Michelle remained herself, calm, humble, never seeking revenge, but always planting seeds of wisdom. She had turned an ordinary shopping trip into a global lesson, reminding everyone that respect is free, but its value is priceless. For the people who had been there that day, the memory never faded. Some remembered the stunned silence inside the boutique when she returned. Others remembered the applause outside when she walked out. And many remembered the tears in the eyes of the employees who realized the depth of their mistake. In the end, the story became much bigger than a boutique or a manager. It became a reminder that even in a world filled with wealth, fame, and power, the greatest strength lies in humility. Michelle Obama showed that day that true greatness does not need to shout or demand. It only needs to stand tall, remain calm, and remind the world of the values that matter most. Her return had shocked everyone, not because of anger, but because of grace. And that was the part of the story that lived on, long after the doors of the boutique closed for the night, long after the headlines faded, and long after the applause stopped echoing through the street.